Hello, good evening. It's 7 p.m. in the UK and it's time for a live question and answers session again, covering low carb, keto and carnivore, predominantly carnivore because that's our bag, so to speak. Yeah, if you've got questions about low carb or keto, which definitely you have, then feel free to ask those questions as well. Just the normal stuff. If we take our time over questions, that's what you want, isn't it? You want us to answer the question in full. So if you post your question in, say, 10 minutes time, and then it's taken another 10 minutes to answer it, we do apologize. So don't keep reposting your question. If you want to jump the queue, then you can do that by using the super chat feature, and we will appreciate your contribution. So without any further ado, I'm going to get Richard onto the stage and ask him to unmute the world's top nutritionist. Let's say the UK's top nutritionist, but I say the world as seen on TV. Hi, Rich.
How are you doing, Stephen? I like the world. The world sounds good.
Yeah. Well, you know, it's the American baseball is called the World Series, but I don't think they play anyone other than Americans. So let's say the world's. Right. Have you had a good day?
Yeah, all good. You?
Yeah, not too bad, actually. We've already got questions. Do you want to dive straight in?
Yes, let's go for it. Let's get into the questions.
Or you're going to add...
I will make every effort to answer. Well, we both will, I guess, as many questions as we can, but I do tend to go off into a little bit of detail. But I promise I will try to rein it in.
Well, I wasn't saying that, actually, in the introduction. I think we should give people a full and fair answer, especially if they've been on early or they're queued up and, they've typed out a long question. So yeah.
Perfect.
So John Mortimer, question. Hi, guys. Could you please talk about osteoarthritis? Can it be reversed? Will lion help more? Can cartilage be rebuilt? The debate seems out on this at the moment. Thanks. Hi, John. Yes, John, thank you firstly for being a really big supporter. And I think your partner is as well. So, yeah, thanks for that. And it's a great question. Did you want to start, Rich?
Do you want to jump in?
Well, you've had these symptoms, haven't you? You've had sort of arthritic symptoms. So I thought it might be best for you to have a crack at that.
No worries. So, look, yes, I believe this is the case. With people with osteoarthritis, arthritic pains, quite often they may not even be arthritic pains. The reason for this is a lot of arthritic pains are attributed to arthritis, maybe when they are not, and they are to do with a compound called oxalate, which binds to calcium and builds up in joints. When we begin to remove the compounds that contain oxalates, then these symptoms seem to go away. I had arthritic pains. Whether I actually had arthritis is open for debate. So mine is completely gone. But again, whether it was arthritic pains or whether it was caused through this damage through the oxalates is open for debate. It is. Let's look at what arthritis is. It's an autoimmune issue. This autoimmune comes from intestinal permeability. And in simple terms, this means that we have holes in our gut. And this is caused by a number of things, predominantly by one of the big foods that we eat that contain a compound called wheat germ agglutinin. You guys are probably familiar with gluten. Gluten isn't the only compound that causes damage to the intestines or the gut. Wheat germ agglutinin can cause this, I believe, at a higher rate. And what happens is these compounds called lectins will bind to the enterocytes that line the gut. They'll cause the release of a molecule called zonulin. And when zonulin is released, it'll cause a gap to appear in the tight junction. Other compounds can cause this as well through another different mechanisms. It isn't only zonulin release. Other compounds, other types of lectins will cause the release of different molecules that will cause the same gap to appear. But when gaps appear, this allows undigested proteins to travel into the bloodstream where they shouldn't be. So the body creates antibodies to fight them. And then through a process called molecular mimicry, the body begins to attack other proteins in the body that look the same. This is autoimmune disease. All autoimmune comes from intestinal permeability. At least I believe so, predominantly, at least. Wheat germ agglutinin, I believe, is the biggest offender. Things like alcohol can also do this. other compounds, casein in milk, and cheese products. And there are a few others also, but the biggest main offender, I believe, is wheat germ gluten. And when we remove these compounds, the gut begins to heal, and now the body stops attacking itself, and these autoimmune conditions seem to clear up. I've noticed this generally across the board. I've worked with people who have suffered with severe arthritic pains that have, at best, been completely eradicated, at worst, massively improved. So I believe that the lion diet is going to be the best outcome for this. Have you got anything to add to that, Steve? Have I missed anything?
No, not really. I mean, one of the things, the cartilage regeneration, there was a Duke Health study, and it was published October the 9th in the Journal of Science Advances. I've got it up on my screen because people always like to know if it's something they can look up for independent research. And the researchers identified a mechanism for cartilage repair that appears to be more robust in ankle joints and less so in hips, but it's still there. The finding could potentially lead to treatments for osteoarthritis, the most common joint disorder in the world. We believe that an understanding of this salamander-like regenerative capacity in humans and the critically missing components of this regulatory circuit could provide the foundation for a new approach to repair joint tissues and possibly whole human limbs. So that they were actually looking at cartilage in particular. Anecdotal. So there's the science. People get cross with me because of anecdotal, anecdotes basically, but it does seem to regenerate for some people on this way of eating. The joint pain gets less, and then when they go and have their DEXA scan, or they go and have an MRI, or they go and have sort of any sort of investigation, people are surprised. The healthcare professionals are surprised that they've seen some regeneration. And the thing is, when you get this response that, oh, that can't be done. Well, yeah, it can't be done on certain diets when there's not enough nutrients. It can't be done if you're constantly inflaming yourself. It can't be done if you've got high levels of insulin. So the way we're eating is not seen very much. So if you've got 100 people coming into your clinic and you're a doctor that specializes in knee pain, and then you go in as a carnivore, they've not seen your like before. So they'll just say it can't be regenerated, but it can, and it does. And does the lion diet help? Yes, definitely. Lion seems to help with most of these things because you're eliminating all causes of or possible causes of inflammatory responses in the body. So that would be my take. Are you researching something, Rich? You seem absolutely focused on something there.
Yeah, so I'm just going through some of the questions on the right. Sorry, just.
All right, okay, you're getting all prepped. That's all right. That's good. But yes, regeneration of cartilage does seem to be a possible thing, and certain areas respond better than others. This way of eating is definitely going to give you the environment to be able to make that happen. It's the same with disc regeneration. You see, many people think that the discs can't regenerate, but that's not true. I have lower back specialism, which was a thing I needed for my general practitioner referral. And basically, when you get into discs and you get into cartilage, there's things you need to understand about the fact it hasn't got blood supply, but it is movement that brings in the fluids. So motion is lotion, as they say. I won't spend too long on that. I was doing a Richard there. I was going too long on something. So let's go into the next question, which is definitely one for Rich, because I know this is one of his pet things. What is your take on turmeric as an anti-inflammatory way to help with osteoarthritis? Are there any carnivore-friendly doctor specialists in the UK that can take on new NHS patients or even private patients? So, Bianca, I think we've spoken in the week. I just want to say that I do have a doctor's database on my website. And all you got to do is go to www.ukcarnivore.com / I think it's search / or hyphen doctors, I think. But anyway, it's on there. It is on there, and you can search for doctors. But I know Richard has quite extensive knowledge of turmeric, so we'll do that, shall we?
Yes, brilliant. So I will keep this as short as I can, but this plays well from the first question from Jonathan. Do not take turmeric. Turmeric is not your friend. Turmeric is incredibly high in these compounds called oxalates. Other things that contain incredibly high levels of oxalates are things like spinach, celery, for example, cocoa powder, many other things. This is easily found online. In fact, there is a website I'll see if I can find later that lists every compound on the planet as far as foods go that contain oxalates and at what level. Oxalates are not good for you. Turmeric does act as an anti-inflammatory, sort of. So if you were to take turmeric, you would see an antioxidant or anti-inflammatory effect. And this is to do with the elicitation of the body's master antioxidant called glutathione. So when we consume this compound, glutathione is elevated, and this confers a benefit. But it doesn't help long-term. And the reason for this is that the pathway that it activates, and you can Google this. I was going to swear that I'm not making stuff up. You can Google this. Turmeric will activate or overexpress something called the NRF2 pathway. The NRF2 pathway is an oxidative stress pathway. It's quite often touted as an antioxidant pathway, but it isn't. It's a pro-oxidant pathway. And the reason for this is that it activates the NRF2 pathway because it's a pro-oxidant, not an antioxidant. And again, you can search this on Google. This is a fact. These compounds are pro-oxidants, not antioxidants. But the thinking behind this is that when we elicit this response, glutathione is elevated, and it's elevated because there's a toxin within the body. So the pro-oxidant effect. Now, glutathione will conjugate to that toxin to excrete it from the body, and we see the benefits from this elevation in glutathione. This is called a hormetic response, hormesis, which is why we do things like cold water dip-in, red light therapy, so on and so forth. The difference is cold water dip-in and red light therapy are environmental hormesis, forms of environmental hormesis. When we consume a compound like turmeric or resveratrol and so on and so forth, this is touted as molecular hormesis. Molecular hormesis doesn't really exist because it isn't an antioxidant effect. When we do this through cold water dip-in, red light therapy, this does not elicit the NRF2 pathway. Other compounds that will elicit the NRF2 pathway are things like mercury, lead, arsenic, tobacco, smoke, exhaust fumes. You will elicit the same response by inhaling exhaust fumes from your exhaust on your car as you would from taking turmeric. It's the same pathway. It's the same response. Would you go and puff on your exhaust pipe for anti-inflammatory purposes? Because it will activate the same pathway. The simple answer is no. You would not take arsenic or any of those other compounds that I've just mentioned either. So you can elicit this glutathione response purely by being ketogenic or carnivore, because the production of beta-hydroxybutyrate will naturally increase levels of glutathione without expressing the NRF2 pathway. The NRF2 pathway can be expressed initially when gravitating into a ketogenic lifestyle because we are going through a stress, because we're coming from a state of glycolysis, which is not our natural metabolic state, and we need to learn to adapt to become fat adapted and keto adapted. Once again, this causes a short-term elicitation through that NRF2 pathway, but it only lasts 2 to 3 weeks. Now, the reason that being ketogenic or carnivore and we consume food, the reason this is not molecular is because ketosis is environmental. And by this, I mean that if you were in a state in which you had no food to consume, your body would go into a ketogenic state and you would produce ketones without consuming anything, without putting anything into your mouth, because you're in an environmental situation in which your body needs to go into that state. So ketosis and carnivore is an environmental state. So this is environmental hormesis and not molecular hormesis. These oxalates found in turmeric cause lots of issues. They are the reason why 70 to 80% of kidney stones are formed. Excess amounts of oxalates can build up in the thyroid and cause thyroid damage and lead to hypothyroidism. It blocks the absorption of vitamin C, which leads to net reduction in protein utilization. It can build up in breast tissue and lead to breast cancer. It can build up in any tissue in the body and cause lots and lots of issues. These oxalates are incredibly damaging to the human body. To put this into perspective, let's talk volumes. So a pack of spinach in the UK comes in around 200 grams. Tests on spinach for levels of oxalate have ranged between 600 to 1600 milligrams of oxalate per 100 grams. Now, 1600 is on the excessive side, but even on the lower side, this means that 2 packs of spinach would potentially contain up to 3000 milligrams of oxalate. 3000 milligrams of oxalate has been known to kill adult human beings. That is very much on the lower end, and it isn't very, very common. But 4,000 milligrams has been known to kill adult human beings. With 15,000 milligrams of oxalate will kill you dead. This means that, if you were to consume excessive amounts of spinach every day, or turmeric for that matter, these oxalates are deadly. Now, what many would argue is, well, if I only consume this much and it takes this much to kill me, then it's fine. Well, let's spin this round. Let's put this into, let's say, my cup. This is a cup of rat poison. Would you drink this rat poison? The answer is going to be no. But if I put this much rat poison in and fill the rest of this cup up with vitamins and minerals and stevia and all sorts of niceties, and this now is the nicest tasting drink that you'll ever drink in your life, and it won't kill you because it's only got this much rat poison in, and it's going to take this much rat poison to kill you. Would you still drink the cup? Well, the answer for most people, I hope, is no. And in there is the answer to your question. Why would you consume this much of a toxin just because it takes this much to kill you? This much isn't going to kill you. You're not going to drink that rat poison. Therefore, why would you want to consume these toxic compounds from things like turmeric, curcumin, and spinach, and so on and so forth? So yes, they elicit an anti-inflammatory response. Yes, they elicit a short-term antioxidant response, but it is done through a pro-oxidant pathway. They are not natural antioxidants. Very few compounds on the planet are natural antioxidants. Astaxanthin being one, things like vitamin C being another, vitamin E being another antioxidant, and so on and so forth. And there are 3 different types of antioxidants, and we can get into that a little bit later. But these are not antioxidants for long-term consumption. And if you do consume these, they go into further exacerbate arthritic pains because of their ability to bind to calcium and build up within the joints. These are compounds that I would recommend you remove immediately. And if you remove them across the board, if there's something you were taking regularly, if you take them out 2 to 3 weeks, I'd be surprised if you didn't see a massive change, a positive change in regards to the level and severity of the pain within your arthritis.
That is a fabulous answer. A fabulous answer. So it seems to be that people are tuning in for your particular thing. We'll get me on in a minute, but right, we've got that, so we get rid of that one. What's the next thing we've got is BHB. See, the thing is, everyone's listening to what you're doing personally. So which is better for fat loss and mental clarity? Absolutely. You sort of answered it. Beta-hydroxybutyrate, exogenous ketone, or MCT oil. Think of getting one of the 2 from Richard's shop. So that's mentioned you. By the way, because this goes out as an audio podcast as well, I have put in the chat my link to doctors, by the way, which I think I guessed and got wrong completely and utterly. So it is the ukcarnivore.com/find-doctors. Okay, so that's how you would find doctors, and that's actually a worldwide searchable database. Right, we're going to go back to questions now. So yeah, Lewis Jones, there you go. So what's better for fat loss and mental clarity, BHB or MCT oil?
Lewis, fantastic question, and thank you very much. Within this cup, and I don't know if you can see, I'd want to tip it so you can see that it's not coffee, but I can't tip any further because it's going to fall out. But within there is exogenous ketones with MCT powder. Again, oil is just as effective. C8 in particular, which is the one I produce, which is officially by certification the world's highest purity, by the way. I use both. Now, they work through different mechanisms, and I won't go into this too much because I don't want it to sound like a sales pitch, but MCT oil, C8, heavily researched, fantastic compound. This works incredibly, completely different to most of the fats within the body. It has the ability to enter the mitochondria directly. Therefore, it almost instantly converts into ATP and ketone production. It doesn't need to go through the carnitine shuttle in the way that fat does through beta oxidation. So it's a lot quicker for energy and mental clarity. The caloric value, and as any of our avid listeners would know, Stephen and I don't work in calories. We don't really believe in the calorie in respect to how they are or they work within the body through traditional means, but there we are. That's a talk for another day. But if you are looking at a caloric value, the MCT, when ingested, is sent straight to the liver through the hepatic portal vein, which means it skips the normal digestive process and it's almost instantly converted into ketones. So that energy value in a caloric state is far less than it would be if it were from fat, a saturated fat, for example. Its ability to convert into ketones will feed the brain, the body, and the heart. It'll breach the blood-brain barrier in the form of beta-hydroxybutyrate, whether you were ketogenic or not. So if you were to take C8, this will produce ketones around, and it does vary from person to person, around, say, 0.5 millimolars. It will increase ketones in an average person. And this is technically a ketogenic state, although that is open for debate is also, and again, we can get more into that as we go on. But 0.5 millimolars is technically a ketogenic state. This will allow the ketones to breach the blood-brain barrier and flood your brain with energy, giving you mental clarity. The production of ketones through the C8 will also elicit and signal the body to produce more ketones. In order to do this, you need to burn body fat. So this will elicit a further fat burning response. But this isn't a miracle powder or lotion portion, whichever thing you want to put on it. By drinking MCT, you're not going to see pounds come off the scale every day. This is just a compound that is going to aid with this transition. It's not a magical formula that's going to allow you to shred pounds and pounds and pounds. But it's fantastic for health. It's one of the, in fact, it's the most antimicrobial substance available without a doctor's prescription. But unlike antibiotics, it doesn't damage your gut. It doesn't damage the gut microbiome. In fact, it's been shown to increase the alpha diversity in the gut and fight off all sorts of nasties as well. Incredible compound. It's the compound that's found in coconut oil. 6% of coconut oil is made up of this C8 or caprylic acid, which is where the benefits come from. And basically what we've done is taken all of these 6% and put them into one bottle. Fantastic compound. Now, BHB works through a different mechanism. BHB technically switches off ketone production endogenously because it floods the body with an exogenous ketone. So it basically tells your body we don't need ketones because they're readily available. Now, this sounds like a bad thing, but it has been touted as a bad thing in the media and the searches on Google. But this isn't a bad thing because when it does this, it signals the cells to ramp up specific enzymes and pathways, the monocarboxylate transporters and specific enzymes within the cells to allow you to use these ketones, which basically elicits an adaptation process. So when we consume sparingly, this will allow the body to adapt quicker and ramp up ketone production quicker than it would if you were doing it naturally. And you can do these things naturally. There's nothing wrong with that. Now, the incredible thing is that when you co-consume MCT with BHB, they work synergistically to ramp up ketone production. To put this into perspective, MCT will elicit, say, a 0.5 change in millimolars. Exogenous ketones will be around 1.5. When co-ingested, it's around 2.5. And again, this is open for debate depending on the person and their response to the compound. But interestingly, when co-consumed, the ketone production endogenously is not shut off, which basically means that you thrive from the ketone production, the adaptation process through the monocarboxylate transporters, and the upregulation of fat burning. But I don't sell this as a fat burning formula. I use it every day. I use it for lots of reasons, for anti-inflammatory purposes, for mental clarity. I use it to help with athletic performance. I do use it to help with fat loss, but I never sell it as a fat loss formula. It is not a magic compound. And the reason in fact, it is a magic compound. Beta-hydroxybutyrate is the best compound available on the planet, but the product is not this super magical formula that's going to allow you to achieve all of your goals, within a few days. But it's a fantastic product to co-consume with a diet. Now, I've told people about the benefits of this before, and they have gone off, consumed these compounds while stuffing their face with pizzas and McDonald's and Burger King, thinking that this will override the negative effect. And it does to a degree in regards to insulin sensitivity, but that's not what the product's about. The product is about co-consuming this with living a healthy lifestyle and further benefiting from those adaptation processes. So look, the short answer is, neither are better. They both elicit responses through different mechanisms, but co-consumption of these, but consuming less of each, so it doesn't cost anymore. It's just you're consuming less of each, but co-consuming will elicit a best response. We can chat about this in more in detail, Lewis, if you wanted to book a consultation. The link is in the YouTube thing description below on my channel. Stephen's also available for bookings as well, but we can really get into this in more detail. And in our Skool Group also, which Stephen and I go live in every Monday at 8 p.m. That is also in the description, so feel free to join that, and we can get really deep into the weeds in regards to specific questions if we don't have time on this channel.
Yeah. But I think the thing I would say for Lewis is, if you are looking for consultation, I would go to Richard. It was very kind of Richard and generous to mention me. But if you're interested in BHB and MCT and supplements like that, I mean, Richard is the man. So, and I'm quite, I'm quite secure in my knowledge to say that. I mean, I can talk about it, of course, but I think Richard's the man if you want it really in depth. So there you go. But thanks, Rich, for the plug. Gemma, I hope you like Skool now you've joined. Gemma, I think, is one of those that's joined recently. But anyway, here's a question which we're allowed to skip, but we're not going to skip because it is actually sort of related to carnivore. She says it's not a keto carnivore related question, so feel free to skip past it if you want. But is there any reliable way of tracking sleep without exposing myself to EMF? No. And we can move on to that. No, I will give you a little bit more detail of why I want to answer that. Is because sleep is part of regeneration, recovery, recuperation, better mental abilities, less anxiety. So sleep is a really interesting area of health. And when you go to this way of eating, one of the things that you tend to be is open-minded. So you've got this question tagged with EMF at the end, electromagnetic fields. And, one of the things that bothers me is people wearing Fitbits, Apple Watch, all that sort of stuff, exposing yourself to EMF constantly, and also, earbuds and all these sort of things. I don't think that's particularly good for sleep. And I think the best way to track sleep is how you feel. How you feel is the best way to track your sleep. I wouldn't even worry about getting a solid 8 hours, because if you sleep for 6 hours and you wake up fully refreshed and full of energy, then you've probably slept okay. And I'm sorry if that sounds a bit patronizing, but, I'm trying to strip the bedroom of all EMF and Wi-Fi. That we've moved rooms and everything to make it darker, painting the walls darker, better curtains. It's at the back of the house, not at the front where there's, a busy road. So I think the best way, firstly, to get your sleep in order is to do all those things. Avoid iPads, the news that will trigger you, especially if you're open-minded, because you realize it's all a big charade and it is hardly news, really. It's more sort of narrative and propaganda. And just get yourself into a place where the temperature's right, you're not triggered, you're not on your iPad, you're not on your phone, and use your own natural senses, because we all know when we've had a bad night's sleep. We do. And we all know when we've had a good night's sleep. I wouldn't drink water or any liquids before I go to bed, so I'm not disrupting my sleep by urinating in the middle of the night. And that would be my 2 penneth on that. And it wasn't meant to be facetious, but I certainly wouldn't wear any. I used to, as one of my pictures, my first promotional pictures, I proudly had my Apple Watch on. Too many things happened to me and to Jane. Jane got headaches when she started to wear it, so she stopped wearing it. The headaches went. It wasn't placebo. We did it a few times. We both loved the Apple Watches and didn't really want to lose them. So it's not placebo, because we're hoping that it wasn't the Apple Watches, but when that went, her headaches went, which is unbelievable. So, and there you go. That's really what happened. Not anti-Apple. If you like your Apple Watch, you think it's great, more power to your elbow. But I do think that you do need to be careful of EMF. So I'm totally with Gemma on that. But I do think just natural tracking of your sleep is the best thing. Unless Richard has got a better way.
No, I think you've nailed that, Steve. It's yeah, I've got nothing to add. Perfect. But this is the reason that my earbuds are corded and not wireless.
Yeah. I tell you what, as a deaf person who wears hearing aids, you do not want to be having EMF around the area at all. Right, Gaza here. This is a sort of two-part question, but I want to cover this, and I want to just broaden it out once we've read the question into normative values and all this stuff. Right, so Gaza's asking, is lower T3 on carnivore normal? Is lower T3 on carnivore normal due to the increased sensitivity to T3? No, it's not about sensitivity. It's about it's not needed so much. So, for instance, one of the things that T3 does is it moves pyruvate across the mitochondrial membrane in the processing of glucose. So, when you're not consuming tons of glucose, you don't need so much T3. Now, there's a hot topic at the moment, this rubbish expression, insulin suppression. And that's because people can't read bloods properly in the context of this way of eating. If people are reading bloods and looking at the normal ranges, normative ranges are not optimal ranges, and they're not based on people eating carnivore, keto, or low carb. Those ranges are pretty much irrelevant in many cases. Sorry to say that. So if you've got low, I had this in the week. I won't show you the bloods, but I have been cleared to do the bloods, and I might do a video on this. The guy was worried because the insulin was very low. It was under the normal range, but his other markers were perfect, absolutely perfect. And he was worried about insulin suppression. And I said, well, hang on a minute. Let's look at this properly. You've got very low insulin and your glucose management is fantastic. Your glucose is there. The fasted glucose was, I think, 88 off the top of my head. It might have been 78. But anyway, it was good. I said, now imagine what would actually be the situation if you had more insulin? Well, I tell you what you'd have a hypoglycemic reading. You would be hypoglycemic. It's called insulin shock. In fact, when doctors, nurses, practitioners, people get the dosage wrong of insulin, you get this thing where you have to eat carbohydrates because the insulin is going to induce insulin shock or hypoglycemic events. So what's the deal with having lower insulin? Well, people are saying, well, it's essential. Yeah, we know it's essential. Your beta cells are not packing up. There's more evidence that many adults are running out of capabilities to produce insulin because there's too much demand from the stupid things that people are eating. So I would say you are not actually in a range that's dangerous. You're in a range that's probably normal for humans who have been lived this long and been eating properly. That's it. You've got to look that we're not adapting to a different way of eating. We are going back to how we should be eating. And we've spent however many years eating the wrong things and we adapted to that. So we're now resetting. So I was very pleased to see Amy Berger, who's quite a big influencer, not like me, a little sort of fly in the ointment of Big Pharma, saying the same thing. There are a lot of people out there saying we need to look at blood ranges in a different way, more in the context. I'm not flogging my book, by the way. I have got a book about this, but it's because I'm passionate that we are looking at things incorrectly. If you've got low insulin and your blood readings are all great, your blood glucose, your daily blood glucose, your average blood glucose, you're not getting muscle wastage, you're not feeling dizzy, then that's a good situation. Okay, so going back to the original question, is lower T3 on carnivore normal due to increased sensitivity to T3? Yes, there may be increased sensitivity, but it's more to do with the fact that it's not being used to move pyruvate across the mitochondrial membrane. That's a basic thing. So, but then we've got the two parts to this question. Is any attempt to increase thyroid output with supplements to a so-called normal range, therefore effectively creating a hyperthyroid state due to that increased sensitivity? Which, you see, if you go with the first bit, if you think it's down to increased sensitivity, then yes, that's a really good question. But what we should be saying is lower T3 is normal because you're not using T3 to move pyruvate across the mitochondrial membrane because you're not processing glucose like that. So it's a good question, but I just think it's framed wrong. I'm really happy if Rich has got a completely different take on it. Thyroid is a big deal for me. I know a lot about the thyroid. I think Rich knows that I'm into that, the function of it, but I'm quite happy. And this is why I love this chat. It's live. So if Richard's got something different, I'm all ears to hear if there is a different thing to say.
All good. Completely agree.
There you go. You see, I genuinely didn't know that. It wasn't scripted. You see, this is it. Because the reason I'm going on about this is the next question is sort of related. So we've got Paul Saladino here. I know it isn't Paul Saladino. Someone misread it and thought it was. My C-peptide results are at the bottom of the range. I stopped my metformin because study shows it lowers insulin production. Any input? Right. And so again, C-peptide, for people that don't know, C-peptide is in the vesicle when insulin is being produced. C-peptide is part of the vesicle. And then what happens? Insulin is released from the vesicle and C-peptide is cleaved off. So it's a proxy marker for the production of insulin. Great proxy marker. Now, why is C-peptide better than insulin? Because insulin has a half-life, or it decays quicker, sorry, I should say, than C-peptide. So C-peptide is floating around a bit longer, so there's more chance to get a decent reading, and also insulin is used in lots of functions. So C-peptide is this great proxy marker. Now, if it's low in inverted commas, or bottom of the range, well, is that because you're making less insulin? Probably yes. Is it because you don't need so much insulin? There you go. Probably yes. And that's it, because you're not doing what the normal range is reflecting. People who eat 60% plus carbohydrates need more insulin. So those ranges relate. Sorry, I'm flogging a dead horse here. I don't really mean to, but it's the third question. It's got the same problem, and that is the normal range is not reflecting the diet. It's like if you're a 40-year-old guy like Rich, and he's looking at his performance stats and he compares them to the range of a carbohydrate-based athlete who's been running for 1 year and is 15 years old, or a schoolboy range, it's totally irrelevant. And I think we've got to start looking at these normal ranges and saying, right, what is the actual relevance here? It's a sort of benchmark, but it's not relevant to the way we're eating. We need to look at it all in context. So what is my insulin level and what impact is it having on all the other markers? Fasted insulin, fasted glucose, my clinical presentation, my muscle mass. And that's important. That's the important things, I think. So if you want to add more on that, then you certainly can.
No, spot on. I was just laughing when you said if you were a 40-year-old guy, and in my head I was picturing this old guy, and then you said me, and I forgot that I was 40. So. But no, I mean, yeah, I had a consult with a gentleman this week, and we went into ranges and how these results need to be looked at in a different way when we live this lifestyle, and for a number of different reasons. But I think you've covered most of them there. But just looking at the question, I'd just like to circle back to one of the other things that Paul's mentioned, if I can find it, in regards to Lewis was asking the questions about the MCT and the exogenous ketones. And Paul said that he hasn't tried any due to the cost, and Dr. Berry says that there's no real need for them. When we speak about these products, we're not trying to upsell these products by any means. You can live an incredibly healthy, the healthiest lifestyle, product-free, supplement-free, if you like. But I think we shouldn't dismiss the potential for supplementation in specific areas. I'm probably one of the strictest carnivores on the planet, probably stricter than Dr. Berry. Become European champion at a pro level, which I don't think is many carnivores on the planet that have also done that. Gravitated into running and achieving incredible things. One of my guys, Mickey Davis, who competed in the European Championships yesterday, won, and he is now number 1 in Europe. He's carnivore, ex-vegan, supplements with MCT and ketones every day. So you can live a lifestyle and you can become fit and healthy. And you can reach, the upper levels of the restraints within that. If you want to achieve extraordinary things, then this is what these products can allow you to do. Or if you want something to help along the way, these people that say that these compounds don't help or confer benefits haven't achieved half of what I have in the athletic world after coming from a lifestyle of being clinically obese and type 2 diabetic and so on and so forth. And I'd like to think that I'm in better shape than most of these people who do put these compounds down. And that's not putting them down in any way, but I think that it's easy to get people look at some studies in a two-dimensional thing in regards to ketones and how they suppress ketone production, which is what we mentioned first and foremost. But there are positives to these things. These are compounds that I've used my entire journey, and I'm absolutely thriving on them. You don't need to use them, but they are there for a purpose should you wish to achieve things outside that box and run 17-minute 5Ks and 1 hour 20 half marathons and become European champions at various sports and so on and so forth. So there are benefits to these compounds, but you don't need them to be fit and healthy. All you need to do is live an animal-based lifestyle, predominantly consume beef and lamb with some salt and water, and you will be thriving.
Yeah, that's cool. And 25th of June, I'm doing a live with Dr. Kimberry. Just a little twig there. A little, what's the word? Plug. A little plug for that. We're going to talk about the American Diabetes Society, which he's setting up in competition to the American Diabetes Association. Actually, what he's trying to do is make people fit and healthy and not be diabetic, which is what the ADA are not doing very well. I'm just going to jump a question, Rich, because this is where I was going with this, because Matthew's asking about fluoride. Now, if you're a carnivore, and this is where ranges and T3 is going to be a bit convoluted, but it will make total sense. You start, because you're open-minded, you start questioning things like tap water. Okay, so many people I speak to in this space, keto, low carb, and carnivore, especially carnivore, do avoid fluoride and do avoid tap water. I do, and I've been doing that for a long time. Now, why is that relating to T3? Well, because one of the problems with fluoride, well, let's go into the thyroid. So the thyroid absorbs iodine, changes it to iodide, and combines it with an amino acid, tyrosine, and it goes on to make thyroid hormone. Okay, it makes T4 and a little bit of T3, right? And so fluoride has been shown to displace iodine. So therefore, you have a thyroid gland that's absorbing fluoride, and that disrupts the production of tyrosine and going on to make on thyroid hormone. So there's another reason then, if you're on carnivore, why you might need less T3, because you've got a better functioning thyroid. All right. So anyway, I'm going to read the question out now. So, hi, Stephen and Richard. Why is fluoride toxic for humans to ingest? Dentists recommend it for good oral health. Not all dentists. They certainly don't. Many dentists actually fault it going into the water supply, because dentists that were switched on thought it would be better. I mean, this is all documented, not to put fluoride in the water, but to change dietary advice. But of course, the Sugar Research Foundation and other people put their oar in. Does iodine bind to fluoride and remove it from the body? Well, yeah, I've just sort of answered that. But there are other takes on fluoride, which I think Rich might have, because I would imagine that's something you want to talk about very briefly.
Yeah, it's incredibly damaging to the body, especially with pregnant women with newborns. It's been known to damage DNA, lead and contribute to arthritic pains, bone damage, and osteoporosis, joint pain in particular. Lots of toxic problems within the body. It's a compound that I avidly try to avoid. I don't use toothpaste. I brush my teeth with just a toothbrush with water. My teeth seem to be in better shape than they've ever been. I had incredibly bad teeth many, many years ago. They were crumbling away. And since becoming, and I was one of these people who would brush my teeth, 3-4 times a day. I was an avid toothpaste user and believer in things like fluoride. But as you say, once you come into this lifestyle and you begin to move down a rabbit hole, and once you understand that everything that we're told about health and well-being and nutrition is upside down, and you realize that the powers that be that are contributing to this are misinforming, then you begin to question everything and you start to look into these things. And fluoride is one of these things that is we're touted. It's touted as a compound that is good for us, but I personally believe it to be detrimental. So I try to avoid at all costs.
Cool. This is a nice question from Once a Week Man, which always makes me laugh, that name. I eat eggs nearly every day, but our hunter-gatherer ancestors would have eaten eggs only occasionally. What's your take on eggs?
I love eggs, but again, I think eggs is one of the compounds on a carnivore lifestyle that can still cause problems. So when we look at a carnivore lifestyle, we think of any compound that is protein or animal proteins, but there are still certain groups of people who will suffer with intestinal permeability and other issues. And these compounds are things such as eggs, milk, cheese, even A2, seafood, particularly shellfish, coffee. All of these things are deemed to be, carnivore type foods. But there are certain people who need to remove all of these and just eat nothing but beef, lamb, and salt. Eggs contains a protein called overmucoid, which is a trypsin inhibitor, and trypsin is a protein that allows us to digest and absorb and process other proteins. So it can cause problems. It can cause gastro distress in some people, and it can negate the body's ability to absorb specific proteins. But that said, these issues are, I believe, are not in the masses. I believe it's one of these things that is minimal. So very few of us seem to suffer with these issues. So I would keep them in if you can. Now, eggs are a fantastic source of choline. Choline makes up every cell in the body. It's essential for the production of neurotransmitters, acetylcholine. It's part of methylation and so on and so forth. So choline is incredibly important within the body, and eggs is a fantastic source of this. So if you can keep them in, fantastic. The biggest thing for me when it comes to eggs is, believe it or not, the calcium. An egg contains around 24, 25 milligrams of calcium, and excess calcium consumption can be a problem. If we are consuming in excess of 500 milligrams per day, then this has been shown by numerous studies to increase risk of cardiovascular disease by as much as 15%. But, you'd be hard pushed to get beyond this, living a carnivore lifestyle, unless you're eating hundreds of eggs, every week. I eat eggs. I think they're fantastic. They work incredibly well for me. But I do agree, with Once a Week man who met us at the War on Health. Fantastic gentleman and a brilliant supporter of our channel. Yeah, I agree. I think they were something that would have been eaten sporadically. Maybe not a compound that was consumed every day, but I do believe that the benefits from eating eggs far outweigh the negatives, unless you are one of these minority that suffers with issues, or if you're looking to reduce calcium consumption. So it's very much an individual answer. They work very well for me, and I try to keep them in. But if you are one of these people that is susceptible to overmucoid, then you would want to remove them. But yeah, fantastic question. Look, the benefits from any animal protein is going to be way more beneficial than consuming plants, without question. If you were a vegetarian, for example, an egg is your best friend. Many vegetarians, obviously a vegan's not going to be consuming eggs, but a vegetarian would. This could be the only source of their nutrients, because plants do not contain high amounts of vitamins and minerals, contrary to popular belief. An egg is a fantastic source of all of these compounds. So it's a brilliant way to bridge the gap between nutrient deficiency also. So I think it's an amazing tool, but very much an individual.
Yeah, and I think I like the question because it does touch on something that we don't really talk about. But yeah, eggs would have been a sort of seasonal spring nesting season would be the abundance of eggs. So yeah, I get what he's saying. They wouldn't have been readily available. But of course, once you started to domesticate animals, then the availability of eggs, which is a fantastic food, very nutrient dense, would have gone up. But it is a great question, and I think Lily Kane has done a fantastic video about 3 or 4 weeks ago about I've been eating eggs wrong, and she found that over a certain amount of eggs, she started having problems. So you do have to look at, well, with anything, you can have too much of anything. You can have too much water, So, just eat eggs to your tolerance. I think that would be what Rich is saying, and that's what I feel as well. I mean, I don't eat lots of eggs. But I would say I probably have, if you averaged it out, maybe 2 eggs a day, maybe 3 eggs a day. But when I do eat eggs, I tend to have quite a lot. So I really enjoy them. I don't seem to have problems. Right, next question. We've only got 10 minutes left. Wow. Okay. Can you explain cortisol on carnivore? Saladino's most recent explanation video for why he left carnivore pointed to it as the main reason to avoid long-term ketosis. Don't forget, I mean, Paul Saladino is not carnivore, really. I think when you're eating 300 to 400 grams of carbohydrates a day, I wouldn't say you're carnivore. I doubt you're even keto at that level, to be honest. So yeah, it isn't the main reason to avoid long-term ketosis, because avoiding long-term ketosis, if you mean like a permanent state of ketosis, nobody thinks that's a good idea. You should be in and out of ketosis. We're not looking for 24/7, week in, week out ketosis, because that's not how the body works. But yeah, what's your take on it? Sorry, Rich.
Fantastic question. Dr. Chafee and I did a takedown on this last year. It's available on my channel. It's had considerably less views on my channel than it has on his, for obvious reasons. A client of mine messaged me the report that Dr. McCullough released in association or conjunction with Georgie Dinkoff. And this was that long-term low-carb ketogenic lifestyles increase cortisol and damage into the body. It was a piss poor, pardon the French, but it was a piss poor report and explanation, which shocked me from Dr. McCullough. And in reading, I lost all respect for him because I've always believed him to be a good source of information. But this report was so shoddy that it was shocking. So Dr. Chafee and I did a 2-hour rebuttal, absolutely ripped it apart with real studies, reference, clinical trials, and research papers. And we showed that living, and I think what, as you were saying, Steve, living this lifestyle doesn't mean that you're constantly in a ketogenic state. The body teeters in and out. But for point of reference, living the lifestyle and maintaining a ketogenic lifestyle, I guess, is what I'm referring to. That does not increase cortisol long term. There are a number of reasons why we would see an increase. As we adopt a lifestyle, we begin to increase the coffee intake, which can have effect on cortisol. We begin to fast for longer, which can affect cortisol initially. All of these studies that were referenced were short studies. I think the longest one you referenced was like 3 weeks. There may be ones longer. I can't remember. This was last year, but we comfortably went through and ripped them apart. The reason Paul Saladino came away from being more animal-based, if you like, or carnivore, is because he sells liver supplements, which is fine. I sell supplements. I'm all for supplements. But because of excessive consumption of organ meats, this can have a negative effect because of the levels of copper and vitamin A, and so on and so forth. So in order to reduce these, consuming carbohydrates will blunt the negative effects, and therefore he can continue to sell his supplements. So financially driven. Paul Saladino wasn't carnivore for a long time. I've been carnivore for probably 6 years, ketogenic for 11 years, and absolutely thriving. Dr. Chafee's been carnivore for over 20. Stephen's been carnivore for many, many years also. We've been carnivore considerably longer than Saladino. My cortisol is not elevated. There are tests you can do with DHEA to show the correlation, because these work against each other. Cortisol tests are flawed. Check out the video. We run out of time and I can see there's a super chat here. So check out the video on my channel. We completely rip it apart. It's a fallacy. Cortisol is not elevated and the studies are all referenced and we can prove that.
Yes. So Ribeye Rob is looking forward to receiving your unflavored electrolytes. I will let you know how I get on with them. Great show as always. Thank you, Ribeye Rob. That's really kind of you.
Absolutely. Thank you, Ribeye Rob. Just a quick thing on the unflavored. They do contain one of those compounds that we mentioned earlier, astaxanthin, which is one of the world's most potent antioxidants. It does taste fishy. It's a compound that has a fishy taste. If you are a hardened carnivore, these are going to be fine. If you're a little bit, thing when it comes to taste, they taste absolutely awful. But there are no nasties in there, and the benefits from the astaxanthin are tenfold. So these are for the hardened carnivore community, not for someone who's new to the lifestyle, expecting it not to taste of anything, because they taste of the seaside is what many have told me. So Ribeye Rob, let me know what you think. Come back and keep us updated. It'd be super exciting to hear your thoughts and how you get on with those.
Yeah, and apologies for people that have put questions. We won't get to them all. This is why we tag on another half an hour on a different platform, which rhymes with Apple Crumble, and also why we have got a successful school community, which is $4 a month to join, where we have a live question and answer on a Monday at 5 p.m. UK time, where you can get your questions in. But you can also put your question into the community, and we'll answer them sort of text based as well. So, if you're interested in that, there's a link in the description to the school community. Right, last question, I think, before we go over to Apple Crumble. How well does carnivore work with anaerobic training, powerlifting more specifically? Wouldn't exogenous glucose stimulate glycogen regeneration in the muscle that is necessary for force production?
Wow, right. 5 minutes to get, I mean, this is an entire episode on itself, which we have covered. These videos are available on both channels of Stevens and mine. Look, really quickly, anaerobic. This was me when I was bodybuilding, and I went on to become professional and European champion. I didn't just have big muscles; I was incredibly strong. My at 75k when I was at sort of comp weight, I used to live around 90k. I'm 70 now because I've come away from powerlifting and bodybuilding, and now I do triathlon training or duathlon training, running and cycling. But my bench press was 165k. My deadlift was 230, and my squat was 190. Which the squat sort of let me down there, but the bench press and the deadlift are pretty high for someone who weighed between 70 to 75k. I was pretty much one of the strongest people in the gym and ranked in the top 10 in the UK in all federations between tested and non-tested, which is why I was going to go into powerlifting. So carnivore is the creme de la creme if you want to excel in any sport. It's exceptionally incredible for endurance sports, as well as strength and power. So carbs do not build muscle. Yes, glucose will store in the muscle as glycogen, but it does this because glucose is a poison. This is why insulin is elicited to pull the glucose from the blood in order to save your life. Yes, it does add volume to the muscle. So for every 1 gram of glycogen stored, we will store 3 to 4 grams of water, which does enable us to lift. It's not the power that's elicited, as in the energy created from this. It's the leverage in the muscle. We can do this or manipulate this. And let's take it back a step. The power sort of glycolysis is not the energy system we use for power. It's the PC system, the phosphocreatine energy system, which we can upregulate through the supplementation of creatine monohydrate anyway. This will also elicit water retention in the muscle, which can offset some of the glycogen lost initially. But it's also important to remember that when you adapt in a carnivore lifestyle, the hydrogen ions are buffered within the muscle. So we have the ability to send lactate to the liver when it builds up, and the liver will recycle it and send it back to the muscle as glycogen at a higher rate than a carbohydrate athlete. So as we adapt, and there is an adaptation process within this, we have the ability to fill muscle glycogen, and we've proven this through muscle biopsy testing, that an adapted ketogenic athlete will hold and contain just as much, if not more, glycogen made endogenously through gluconeogenesis and so on and so forth within the body comparative to our counterparts. So we don't lose muscle. We lose muscle glycogen initially, but as we adapt, we have the ability to store this. But the beauty is we also store more fat in the muscle in the intracellular myolipids. So now we have more volume in the muscle. We tend to be consuming more salt, which also allows more water retention again. So we have the ability to be bigger, stronger, more leveraged, while carrying less weight also because of the way that the glycogen is stored and without the muscle. So if we are competing, we can hit lower weight categories. We'd be carrying a lot less body fat. So if we were competing in powerlifting, for example, we would have more power in regards to power to weight ratio. But this is the creme de la creme. But the short is that we still create muscle glycogen just endogenously. There is an adaptation period and it does take some time. But if you are willing to make that change, you will become fitter and stronger living this lifestyle than your counterpart on carbohydrate.
Brilliant. Thank you, Rich. With 30 seconds left to go, in the chat, I put a link to our next 30 minutes, which is on the platform which rhymes with Apple Crumble. And it would be nice to see you over there. Thanks to everybody that has posted a question. If you really want your questions answered and you're frustrated, you could always join our school community and get your question answered there. Don't forget, we do this free every single Sunday, starting at 7 p.m. in the UK, and we do it for an hour, and then we do another half hour. So you could also see us on Tuesday night, Carnivore Team GB. We're part of the panel. Richard sometimes does it. I sometimes do it as well. That's again another hour, which is free. Got the fantastic people like Carnivore Muscle on there as well, and the Kent Carnivore. Anyway, for those of you that have been watching us on YouTube, I want to thank you very much indeed. Hopefully you will join us at the other platform, and if you cut and paste your question, you can put it in over there. Thanks very much.
Thank you all.
And we will